This is Thursday, October 23rd, and tonight's our opening for our shore leave exhibit here at Tacoma Historical Society. And the idea we got was off the top tall ships, that the city in Tacoma is very excited about when the tall ships arrive. And what we thought of as an exhibit of looking at historically when the sailors came on the tall ships or came with the Navy, what sort of town did they see? What did they see in Tacoma? What was Tacoma about? The tastes and things that they did. And so that's sort of the way the exhibit is organized. And what we have, our very first part is our very early days here, originally collected by my great-grandmother, Carrie Lindquist, near the turn of the last century. And so these are items, for instance, that you would buy, the tourist items. You could see members of the Puyallup tribe, downtown and stuff that were there. And you would be able to see totem poles all over the place, even though totem poles are not made by the natives. You know, we have a big prominent one in our Fireman's Park, and, they were on various stores, along with cigar store Indians. And when you arrived in Tacoma and you looked at the shore, here is something from a Bank of California anniversary pamphlet. The pamphlet is actually much larger than what's here, and it's a depiction of approximately where the Northern Pacific headquarters building is. And the drawing there, a work of art, is actually off this photograph down here in the corner. And so you would come to town and you'd see the shoreline, which is a nice thing. It's sort of a mess. You'd see the mills. That's the Old Town Mill. You could take a ride out on the Point Defiance streetcar, and this is before it was electrified, so we have the steam locomotive. If you stayed in Tacoma for any period of time, you could end up staying in a boarding house. And that, what we think is a boarding house, that was somewhere down in this section of town. In coming to town, if you stayed for any period of time, you could have various hotels that you could stay at. And this is a ledger from the tourist hotel that was down on Pacific. And this is from 1906. And these are the actual people that came and used the hotel and signed the register. A view of Tacoma from the West Shore magazine. Again, technology before you had halftone photographs printed in magazines, you had lithographs in magazines. And also another boarding house here. This is an enlargement of a postcard. And these people just moved to Tacoma and they wrote on this side of the postcard, "This is where we are living for the present." And what's really great about this photograph, this is Broadway right here. And where this house is now where the Temple Theater is. Your mother or your relatives or to your girlfriend or something. You came to visit the barber when you were here. Came to visit the barber and the doctor. As a man, you had all these different things that you often carried around in your pockets. One of the ones I really enjoy is this silver telescoping drinking cup. And in the old days, there were public drinking cups. There weren't, Dixie cups or disposable cups. And there would be a cup there, like at a public fountain, and people would drink out of that cup before they knew about, bacteria and things like that. So if you were interested in keeping yourself safe and clean, you would carry around that telescoping drinking cup in your pocket. And so when you saw the water and you wanted to have a drink, you pull it out, get the water in your cup and, and drink the water. We had an artist coming through town, Anton Fisher, who was a merchant marine sailor, who talks about coming to Tacoma. As you can see, that's from Tacoma to another port in his book. And he was an artist, and this is a picture we particularly like, that's why we have it twice. This is a lady from the Seamen's Rest Mission trying to talk with the men in the boarding house. And what you have is the gentleman with the cigar over there is the crimper. And we use the term crimper as probably a better name for it than someone being shanghaied. He's the guy that signed up the sailors to the ships, sometimes by legal methods and fair methods, and sometimes by drugging and knocking on the head and stuff to become the sailors. A toiletry set, and so we have at the Donnelly early motion pictures. The Donnelly was at the corner of 9th and Pacific. It's that parking garage building now, the Winthrop Ramp parking garage. The Grand Theater was a theater at the corner of, across the street at 9th and Pacific, where that Indian restaurant is now. And then the Tacoma Theater was one that was here at the corner of 9th and Broadway. And what's interesting about that, and one of the reasons I have that particular picture mat in frame, when this thing opened, when the theater opened, they had one of the shops they had down there on the Broadway level was a D.S. Johnson and Company, which were pianos piano store, and that's where my great-grandfather worked when that building opened up. What we have here is this little thing. We'll probably do a sort of red light district of Tacoma exhibit again someday, but what this is sort of a guide to the red light district. It's called the Sporting and Clubhouse Directory. And in the old days, the sporting district was the red light district. When you called a man a sportsman, it wasn't about, you know, playing baseball or something necessarily. There was also a secondary, not so nice sort of connotation to it. And so what that booklet was, this advertising firm published, it lists all the different houses of prostitution and what are the specialties of the different houses of prostitution. And then we have two ladies, you might say, of easy virtue, a vaudeville dancer, and the story behind this card here is from a Tacoma photographic studio. This was not sent in the mail. I'm thinking maybe it would not have been able to go through the mail, considering what the post office standards are. The Tacoma Public Library is putting my postcards up on their website now. Looking up the 11th Street, you know, in the old days. I like that. It's a real film noir sort of view. Actually, the postcard before we blew it up was even darker than that. In the early part of the 20th century, one of the biggest deals we had was Fleet Week, when the U.S. Navy came by. And so we're in the centennial this year of the Great White Fleet. And what had happened is President Theodore Roosevelt, who prior had been Assistant Secretary of the Navy before he became Vice President, believed in having a big Navy. And he built up the Navy, much like the United Kingdom and Germany were building up their navies at the same time in this period before World War I. And when he built it up to be such a big navy, he sent it around the world. And so the Great White Fleet went all the way around the world, all the way around Latin America, all the way across the Pacific. And here's the fleet entering Puget Sound. Here's the fleet anchored in Commencement Bay. And I love this one because this is that Browns Point has been logged off. That's probably Jerry Meeker has divided those things up and is already selling those lots. And so we gave them a big welcome. This is an arch that's between the Northern Pacific Building and the old City Hall. Actually, it wasn't the old City Hall then, it was just the City Hall. Here's the arch again, and here the people are marching before us. I think these photographs are wonderful. I mean, I've lived in Tacoma now 50 years, and I've never seen this many people down on the street. You know, the Daffodil Parade used to be a big deal and everything, but look at all the people. And this is when we're a town of maybe, you know, 75,000 people. We have this many people down for for the parade. This is Mary Bowlby's grandfather's tools and equipment that he had when he was a doctor. Maybe this is his great-grandfather. And here is the various things that came in the black bag. We had a person donate this Old Town Emergency Hospital ledger. So this is your accounts as a patient, you know, around 1908. The most impressive thing about Tacoma, what makes Tacoma unique, is its natural setting. All the cities that the sailors visited would have had downtowns, and they all would have had restaurants, and they would all had most of them would have had streetcars. But they didn't all have mountain like we do. Particularly if you're out at sea, you know, you have a flat horizon for all those days or weeks or months. Or the other harbors you would visit, like, you know, like San Francisco or Los Angeles, you wouldn't have this mountain sticking up there. Particularly if you had a stay that was longer, you'd have much more likely to see it. And so these are almost all just views of the mountain. This is the object I'm the proudest of. This is a painting by my great-great-uncle, Fritz Kohling, who was a Swedish journalist and artist. And this hung in my grandmother's house for many, many years. And so when I was able to set up my own household, I was able to get this. And this has the place over my hearth at home. And these are other ones that I've collected over time. This is another lithograph. A Lionel Salmon. Lionel Salmon painted the mountain more than anyone else did, probably 2,000 or 3,000 times, and sold things along the side of the road. So that's, both of these things would have been things that you could afford to buy if you were one of the visiting sailors. It's sort of a Grandma Moses view, a very primitive view of the mountain, and then a view by an anonymous artist and by Frederick Southworth, who was one of our very prominent painters at the turn of the century, back all the way up to the 40s.